Hey guys, I haven't done one of these spontaneous talks in a while, but I had to do this. The lighting's not even good, so the camera quality's not very good, but I had to get my thoughts down on this. So, as you know, for the past 3 years, we've experienced some craziness, man. And I think a lot of us, all of us, we have our lives before the pandemic, whatever you call it, and then the lives afterwards, right? And sometimes I think because we've separated our lives into those two intervals, we forget to keep dealing with, keep processing some of the things that maybe we didn't finish processing from before the pandemic. So, what am I talking about? Why is this suddenly something I'm thinking about? Especially, it's like my channel's not even really talking about this stuff ever. So, the past maybe month, I've had sporadic panic attacks when crossing major roads. And it started one night. I live pretty close to a pretty popular part of downtown Santa Monica. And I was crossing the road, and suddenly I started feeling lightheaded. And so I immediately turned back in the middle of the road, and I just stood there. I was like, what is going on? And I thought it was because I drank too much caffeine. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to cut caffeine then. But it wouldn't stop. Basically, any road that was a little too busy, there was enough cars crossing, I'd feel a panic attack start just bubbling out of nowhere. And so it got to the point I cut caffeine completely. I thought this was like caffeine jitters or something. And it wouldn't go away. And I was trying to explain it away in many different ways. I was like, maybe I'm stressed out, maybe whatever. So I have to give a shout out to Dick Klein. Dick, I know you're going to watch this. If you don't, I'm going to send this to you. But Dick was like, there must be something related to a road, a trauma in your some years before, maybe even in your childhood that you're not dealing with or you forgot about that you need to figure out. So I was on the phone with Dick and I was like, what could it be? I've talked about stuff from my childhood involving a road, but I was like, we've processed that already. And so I didn't know what it was. And I talked to my roommate, and my roommate's like, maybe it's that time. Remember that time you almost got killed by a car? And suddenly it just hit me. There was an incident January of 2020. So a few months before the lockdown started. I think lockdown started, I believe, either the first week of April or the last week of March. At this point, these past few years have been bunched up. So a lot of us don't remember the time frame, but in the very beginning of 2020, right over there, a street before my blocks or my community, that's the right word, I was crossing the street. It was pretty late at night, and it was a walk sign, right? So I'm crossing the street, and then suddenly I hear someone yell behind me, and by instinct, I just jump forward. And thank goodness I jumped forward, because a car, right as I was jumping, I didn't even land yet, the car comes speeding by way too fast. It ran the red light. It was red, of course. It ran the red light. And so by this much, I didn't die, basically. Like, it was crazy. So I basically, like, that day I could have died. January 8th, 2020, I could have died. And I remember I went back home. I told my roommates, and it was like, whoa. And then that very day, I also found a church group, right? So I told my church group, and that's it. I didn't really have too much time to process this, because as you know, a few weeks later, the pandemic happened, right? So all of us got to a different level of stress and we had different priorities. Okay, now we have to figure out how to survive this mysterious disease that might kill us all. We had to survive beyond the disease. Okay, economically, what are we going to do, et cetera, right? Financially, et cetera. So the mind had to prioritize other things, but there was that trauma from the fact that I almost got killed by this car that ran a red light, and the guy didn't even stop. He ran the red light. For a brief second, he realized he almost killed someone, and then he drove off. And I remember there was a regular resident. He was the one that yelled. There was a homeless guy at the opposite corner, and there was another homeless guy over there. And they were trying to be like, hey, let's get that guy's license plate. But it was like there wasn't enough time, or the guy drove off. And normally when you have like a near-death experience, it's one of those things you just got to tell people, right? It's just one of those things that lives with you. Like, you don't just block it out of your mind. Like, I sort of just forgot about it. Like, 2020, some people in my church group will mention it, and they'd be like, that's one of those things. Like, but I think after 2020, by 2021, I think just rarely did it get mentioned anymore. So I sort of just like forgot about it. But the thing is, just because you forget about it doesn't mean you don't have trauma from it, right? Literally, like, I almost died. It was crazy. Like, before COVID, quote unquote, would have killed everyone, which it didn't, of course. Like, I would have like not been alive during any of that. So, yeah, just one of those realizations. I gotta again thank Dick Klein for getting me to really think about what potential trauma could I have had related to streets that started giving me panic attacks. And then my roommate, he's such a reflective guy. He got me to remember this incident, because what happened was this incident made me realize something. I need to really keep building my legacy, right? I have an amazing martial arts brand. And I basically, after this incident, I delved full into my martial arts brand. I very soon, a few months later, once things chilled out a little with all the mask bullshit, like I started training again. I started training kickboxing, boxing, everything. And even before the pandemic started, I was already taking boxing lessons, because, in fact, the boxing lessons, I had just started them, and then the pandemic happened. It was so funny. But, like, all of that wouldn't have started. I wouldn't have done any of that if not for this incident. Basically, all the emotions, all the potential trauma this almost getting killed by a car caused, I channeled it into, okay, I'm going to build my legacy. I love martial arts. I've always wanted to keep going with my martial arts journey. Let's do it. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing for 3 years. And, now we're sort of past the pandemic. We're past a lot of this stuff. Past the pandemic. Arbitrary date, right? It just ended one day. But there's definitely now the mind can focus on other things that maybe it didn't prioritize in dealing with, but still there's a lot of shit to kind of sort through, right? So I just had that realization today. I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is where the panic attacks are finally coming from. It's like the mind has a almost 3 year delay of, holy shit, I almost died crossing a fucking street because some dude, he was pretty old, like some dude who shouldn't be driving, ran a red light and drove off anyways, not caring that he almost killed someone. And, once you have a source for where a lot of this is coming from, like these sudden, like, uncontrolled bursts of anxiety is coming from, you're like, okay, well, I've recognized it, right? There's an acronym I'll give you guys. It's called RAIN. You recognize, that's the R. You accept, that's the A. Investigate, that's the I. And nurture, that's the N, right? So I, for a month, recognized that I've been getting panic attacks. And I don't know if I've accepted them. I guess I've accepted them. And Dick Klein really helped me further investigate, because I was investigating. I thought it was caffeine related. But come on, dude, I've been drinking caffeine for a very long time. So Yeah, I hope this story just shows you guys that I'm sure everyone, if you've had a life, any type of life before the pandemic, there's probably things you need to deal with, potentially go to therapy or just think about, reflect on like we're doing now. And don't let the fact that the pandemic happened just stop you from potentially getting over certain things that you don't even know that you haven't gotten over. So it takes a lot of reflecting, right? Especially if some of you are dealing with some kind of crippling anxiety or dealing with something that's interfering with your day to day. Investigate what is the cause, and if you can't find the cause, maybe it's something that before the life changed permanently with how the entire world changed under pandemic and now AI's taken over, just like the world changed completely. Before that, were you dealing with something? And did you kind of put a pause to it? And you might have even blocked it out of your mind. But like, it's still important to deal with it. It's kind of like, for example, sometimes you have trauma from your childhood and you think you're over it, but you never really kind of found some kind of closure to it, and then years later it bubbles up again. So this is like an example of that, but now it's almost like, I don't know what I'm saying, honestly. It's gotten to the point where I think I've expressed what I need to say, so and I'm just repeating myself, but really take some time, because things are sort of in a calm before the storm right now. And so this is the time for you to kind of fortify your mind a little, so whatever happens in the next few years, you're at the right faculties. So this includes looking at certain things that maybe you hadn't gotten over from pre-pandemic, emotional things, traumatic things, whatever, and see what you can do about it. Do you need therapy? Do you need to just talk to someone? Do you need to just acknowledge it and move on? You don't need to keep dwelling on it, but at least remember, so that way, if anything happens in the future, you'll be like, oh yeah, there was that thing. I don't know. So, anyways, I'll keep you guys posted on my journey. And it's just crazy, man. It's crazy. I just forgot. Like, so many things have happened these past 3 years that I forgot that January 8th in 2020, that could have been my last day. And, like, that is something that should give you an existential crisis and everything, because I thought I dealt with it, but obviously my mind's telling me I haven't fully dealt with it. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much. This was pretty impromptu. The lighting's not good. The camera frame rate's not good, but I hope you just listened if you didn't like the picture. Okay, guys, talk to you soon.